Good morning. Today is October 9th, 2025, and it is 7:50 a.m. U.S. Central Time. And my name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano. And I'm recording this video from my home, located at the 26714 Valleyside Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494, United States of America. So this morning, I'm making this session a little bit early in the day, so I apologize for the face. I woke up a few minutes ago, but I wanted to make this session early because I got some important information yesterday that could be, I think it could be pivotal, right? It could change the trajectory of things, because the fact that I know this before it happens, if it happens tomorrow, it's just it shows coordination, right? And not only that, it also shows that the information that the informant is giving me, the Venezuelan informant that works with Diosdado Cabello closely, is giving me is accurate. And all the information, that means that all the information he has given me has been accurate, right? And I know it has been accurate, but I think it's important to show the authorities and the public that this information that I'm getting is legit, right? The reason why I say that is because how could I know this before it happens, right? There's no other explanation. First of all, I'm a pro se litigant in this. I'm a pro se respondent, right? So I have no legal training. I never went to law school. And I've never been in court before this, like before. And I mentioned this in one of the videos. In the 40-something years that I've been alive, nobody has ever sued me, ever, right? Until Diosdado Cabello sued me with two law firms at the same time for two different things, right? In April 2025. So having no training, no experience, how could I foresee this, right? The reason I know it is because the informant told me what they're doing, right? So that's what I want to talk about, right? So that's the first topic. Of course, I'm going to treat this topic because I know, right? Because now I know what they're going to do tomorrow. I'm going to treat this topic with surgical precision, right? I'm not going to give them any ammunition in this video that they can use. So that's that. Also, right, because I was thinking about this morning, right, when when I was thinking about making this video, the thought was that if this turns out to be the case tomorrow, people will ask, right, how can right? How can me, Rinaldo, communicate with the informant freely if I'm under this heavy surveillance that I'm claiming, right? How is that possible? Like, how is that possible that I can, with let's call it impunity, right, communicate this sensitive information to and from this informant that is working with Diosdado Cabello and is trying to, create a coup d'état against Diosdado by using me, right, in a way. But I mean, I understand that he has an agenda. I understand that, and I mentioned this before. Like, it's kind of it's one of those things, right, that is paradoxical, right, because he's helping me, right, and he's helping me rescue my son. So I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I know that he has an agenda, and what he wants is to, depose Diosdado Cabello and take the reins, right? So in that sense, I'm helping him, right, accomplish something that would not be good for other people, right? And I'm not talking about just that. I'm talking about the other people that will be hurt after he takes power, right? But it's one of those things that the enemy of your enemy is your friend, right? So I have to accept the assistance, right? I'm not going to refuse assistance on the grounds of something that he might do in the future, right? When he does it, when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it, right? Okay. So because of that, right, of that thought, that people will ask themselves, how is that I can do this, passing information back and forth, if I'm under such extreme surveillance, which I am. So yeah, that might be used to question whether, what I'm saying is accurate. So because of that, of course, I'm not going to reveal here the little details of the technology, but I'm going to give some hints about how I designed it, right? The technology of communication that I'm using, right? The platform. It's I don't know if the U.S. military uses something like this. I imagine, right? They might have some flavor of something like this, because I cannot be possible the first person that thought about this, right? But it's possible that in other circles, non-civilian circles, this thing exists, right? I don't know. I'm not a military or communications officer. I don't know. Right? But from my vantage point, right, this is something that I would say that this is something that I had to create to solve this problem. And I created it not because I'm smarter than them or because I have more knowledge or more technical skills. No, it's not of that. It's because they exposed me to all this and they gave me this advantageous observation point for years, and I know deeply how the interception technology works, and I know how to avoid it. Right? It's just a byproduct of them putting me here for a long period of time observing what they're doing. Right? That gave me the insight to be able to design this. Right? It's not about technical chops, because they have, I'm one person, they have thousands of engineers. If it was about technical chops, they would know how I do it, right? The reason why they can't figure out how I do it is because none of their thousands of engineers have the same observation point that I have, right? None of them have been trapped in Katy for 11 years watching all this. So they have no idea how I do it. Right? Okay. So let's start by the important item, right? So the important item is the Venezuelan informant told me that the plan of ACME Law for tomorrow being October 10, 2025, when we have that hearing where the judge at the 387th court is going to sign the orders, right? I mean, that's the scheduled hearing for tomorrow. So what the informant told me, remember, this is not any informant from the street. Like, this is a guy that works in the Venezuelan Army and has, a position that is relatively high, right? So he told me that what they're going to do tomorrow, right, is that they're going to try to find me in contempt of the court for exposing Morgan Heibner's fraud upon the court at the appellate court, right? Which would be a perversion of the law system in itself, of the judiciary system, because and I'm not admitting to anything, right? I'm just interpreting what it would mean if they do this, right? It would be a perversion because what Morgan Heibner is doing is fraud upon the court, right? It's a very serious charge, right? And I'm making that accusation under oath, right? The first thing the judge needs to address is that, right? If he diverts his attention to addressing anything else than that, what system is this, right? But anyhow, that's what they're going to try to do tomorrow. And apparently they're already working on the paperwork. Contempt of court is a charge that could, on the discretion of the court, could put me in jail, right? So it would be the perfect solution, right? Because it would neutralize me. I would not be able to even talk to the informants. I won't be able to post anything on internet, and it would credit me, right? So I can see how that can be tempting, right? So for my objective with this session, this information accomplishes what I want, which is to put this information out preemptively. If they do it, right, it not only confirms coordination, it also confirms that the informant has hooks in ACME law firm, right? That he flipped William Carl Adams. So that's, that is important thing. Now, when I say that, right, if anyone else, I imagine, right, some authority must be watching this spectacle at this point. I implore you, please try to protect William Carl Adams, right? Because, what the informant told me today, and I already said, right, he could be in danger, right? Like, it's not my intention to indirectly cause, anything bad to anybody, right? But I have to say what the informant told me, right? Because it's important that I put the information out there in case I do it. There is a timestamp record, this session, one day before, saying exactly what they were going to do, right? Which, and again, this is my opinion, it would be a perversion and a tremendous irony if the focus of the court turns into that question rather than the fraud upon the court. Okay. I mean, the priority of the court should be to preserve its own integrity, right? And if anybody is telling you that the integrity is compromised, right, are you going to try to put the person who's telling you that in jail? I mean, are we in Venezuela? This is exactly what happens in Venezuela, right? The person that makes an accusation is put in jail. So, it would mean that Diosdado Cabello conquered Katie, right? If that is what ends up happening, like he successfully conquered it because he turned it into Venezuela. So now that I'm talking about that legal topic, I'm a very humble person, right? I don't boast, or I don't know how to pronounce it well, right? I don't take pride on my technical accomplishments, right? But sometimes things happen that when I see them, product of the work that I do, right? Sometimes these things happen, and when I see them, it's humbling, really, to see a machine doing these things, right? And this is the perspective in which I'm going to say it. So I was, running the legal vaccine yesterday, right? And it produced an insight that, honestly, I see it and I think it's brilliant. I wouldn't have, thought of that in a million years. I want to share it. I don't know if this would be, this legal vaccine system that I developed has, thousands of parameters, right? Hyper-tuning parameters. And it is possible that I play with the parameters in a way that the thing is not reasoning correctly, right? It's possible. But I look at the argument and I think it's brilliant, right? And so my goal with saying this here is, so if the Venezuelan informant, sees this, which I think he will, please pass this information to a lawyer, right? To consult, right? And tell me if this is a sound argument, right? Because if the argument is so sophisticated that I can't find any precedents, right? But so that's why I don't want to put it in a legal filing, right? Because I don't want Morgan Heibner, to say that I'm crazy, right? So if the Venezuelan informant can check with the lawyer and let me know, right, I would really appreciate it. I'm going to make a small parenthesis, right? Because this, I think this will lend credibility to what I'm saying, right? That thought of, Morgan Heibner calling me crazy made me remember an incident that happened on April, right? So when Diosdado Cabello, using Morgan Heibner, sued me for quote-unquote divorce, right? I had 15 days to respond, right? There is a process in which you have to respond. Sorry, give me just 1 second. Just 1 second. Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. So they filed the petition, right? And there is a period of time in which you have to respond, right? At the time, I didn't have the legal vaccine, right, fully developed. I mean, I had kind of a precursor to it, but I was using it for other things, for my arguments to the IRS and to the SEC and things like that. But it wasn't really to respond to lawsuits. So there is a certain time in which you have to respond, okay? And she sent me that lawsuit. It was obviously a harassment document, right? And a judge signed something on a paper, on one of the documents that were in the package, right? But the judge didn't put his name. It was just an illegible signature, right? Which reminded me of and this is documented in the book and in other places, when the PayPal mafia responds to an email, they never sign their name, right? And because the child was kidnapped, like my former partner didn't tell me for 50 days where the child was living, for God's sake, right? In my response to the filing of Morgan Heitner, I made one of the bullet item points that I put was asking the judges of the court to please put their name on whatever they sign, so I know who is responsible, right? I'm mentioning this anecdote because like now that I've been more involved in the legal process, right, and I've been doing this in different courts, I understand that bullet point, that statement, could be seen as this guy is crazy, like he's telling the judge what to do, right? Or he's trying to tell the judge what to do, right? He's giving an order to the judge. Like, the person must be crazy, right? And I filed that with the court, and Morgan Heitner included that response in her original exhibits with the title. So she put the title of the document, and she put, this is in connection to the respondent's state of mind or mental health, or something like that, like implying that my response was a proof that I was crazy, right? And it's funny to me, right? It's funny to me because that shows, right, that just 6 months ago, I didn't have any clue of even how to file a document how to address a judge in a filing, right? I didn't even know that basic thing, right? Just 6 months ago. And this is relevant because what I'm saying, right, about the contempt of court, like I could not have foreseen that because I don't have that legal training, right? The only explanation is that the informant told me that, right? And if they do it tomorrow, it's going to be a confirmation of everything that, everything, the coordination, the informant role within the Venezuelan army, and that he has the hooks in the ACME law firm, specifically on probably William Kyle Adams, right? So that's what I mentioned, but it was quite funny, right? And it was, I mean, when I think of this, right, it's kind of the same feeling of when I was remembering the other day about the fake security cameras, right? In a period of 2 years, I went from naively buying fake security cameras on Amazon, thinking that would deter the network, right? Because I didn't understand the scope of the network. I didn't know that it was just Taro Cabello, right? And Xi Jinping, and in 2 years, I went from that state of being to having possession of their entire database, geo-database, and crypto payments database, and having technology to understand it and decode it, right? And having computer vision models to identify agents by anchoring things on their ears. Like, it's a tremendous, advancement, right, in a period of 2 years for a person that had no training on this, right? But again, I'm not saying this from the perspective of I'm smart or I'm better than, no. I'm saying that from the perspective of see how much information they have been giving me by putting me here, that I'm able to draw these conclusions, right? That on itself proves what they're doing, because there's no other explanation. How could I have gathered all this knowledge? How? Especially being under surveillance 24/7. Nobody can pass me this amount of information, right? It's impossible. So that on itself proves That's what I'm saying is, is the truth. It's what's happening, right? It's our facts. So that's what I mentioned in that, right? The informant also told me that a secondary goal of this plan of finding me on contempt of court tomorrow, October the 10th, on that hearing, is distraction. That's a secondary goal. Because they have a problem. The problem is that, so remember, this court that we're talking about rendered verbally this ruling on September 11, 2025. And the ruling was for a temporary orders that had a fixed term of 60 days, right? And at this point today, it has been 28 days since that verbal ruling, and the orders have not been really signed at this point. And this is a tremendous violation of due process on itself, because while the order is not signed, and this is why they don't sign them, right? While the order is not signed, I cannot appeal, right? One can only appeal a signed order, not a verbal order, right? So while the order is in this state in which is verbal but not signed, my parental rights are stripped, and I cannot seek relief on a higher court because the order is not signed, right? So it's a trap, procedural trap, to keep the other party from appealing the decision, right? And at the same time, it reduces legal exposure of the people that are creating this order, because while the order is not signed, it's not considered finalized, meaning that the judge could change his mind and he could, revert what he said and say something else, right? So there's a door to leave the situation, right? As long as the order is not signed. But it's been 28 days for an order that lasts 60 days, and it is still not signed. How is that possible? Like 50% of the time that the order is supposed to last, the order has been in a state that it's unappellable, right? This is a profound violation of the process and puts into question, what is this court doing? Like, how can it's possible that a court that emits an order for 60 days, in almost 30 days, they don't sign it, right? But by creating this situation tomorrow, they will create an impasse in the hearing in which the attention will be diverted to that minor issue, right? Instead of focusing on the bigger issues, which are the fraud upon the court by Morgan Heibner, and that the orders are not signed and have not been signed for 29 days, will be tomorrow, right? And they will create another delay because of the contempt, quote unquote, right? Will justify further delay. So when this issue comes up on the appellate court, on the third court, or whatever court, right, they will say, no, the delay was because he was in contempt of court, right? It will put the burden, the blame of the delay on me, right? But I haven't, for the last 29 days, I've been begging them to sign the order, even if it violates my constitutional right. But I need it to be signed so I can appeal it, right? And that's why I had to file a writ of mandamus, because they have me in this state where I don't even have the right to appeal. I mean, they're not only stripping my parental rights, they're stripping my right to appeal their own constitutional order. So that's the secondary goal of the impasse tomorrow. Give me just a second, because my dogs are going crazy. I'm really sorry. Just a second. Hello. Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that is the secondary goal, right? To create that distraction, disrupt the process time-wise, and blame the disruption on me, right? So the narrative would be that the order had not been signed because I've been in contempt of court, right? And create a narrative that distorts the reality of what has happened, right? So it accomplishes the two goals in one shot, which is the kind of things that they like to do. They usually, when they do something that accomplishes multiple goals in multiple fronts. So, you know, if they find me in contempt tomorrow, they will potentially put me in jail, silence me, discredit me, blame the delays of 29 days in signing the orders on me, and, you know, not address the issue of the fraud upon the court committed by Morgan Heidner multiple times with all her drafts. Like, she has sent 3 drafts at this point, right? Now that we're at this, you know, talking about legal topics, I want to talk about the sophisticated argument that the legal vaccine, which I'm going to brand as roadrunner-law.com in the future. I'll do that, but I'll do that after I recover my son. Of course, I can't divert energy on that right now, but I will do it. The argument that it found, I think it's brilliant. Okay, so my plea is to the informant: please pass this information to a competent lawyer to review it. And if this is the case, please let me know. I mean, if this is a sound argument, because I would would love to make this argument, right? So this is the candidate that the system found, right? I need to get a little bit of context to explain so you can see, right, why I think it's brilliant. On September 11, the judge verbally rendered some orders, okay? And the fraud upon the court of Morgan Heidner consists on completely changing the orders, right? When she transcribes it into the drafts, and she sent me the drafts, right? So in the draft, she put a bunch of things. I'm not going to get into the details of all the abuses, right? Because it's going to take an hour. But there's 2 things that are not explicitly said in the filings that I did with the appellate court, but I'll say them here, okay? So one is, she put a lot of language threatening me with jail time if I kidnap the child internationally, right? And this is a move to discredit me, like to put something in the record that makes an external observer, like a judge in the federal court, think or justify that he thinks that I'm crazy, right? I mean, just that she had to put that in the order, right? That I will not kidnap the child internationally. That's crazy. I mean, first of all, I haven't left the United States, I think, since 2019. I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't left Katie in years, right? Secondly, there is an order. I mean, the temporary orders on itself are to strip me from the basic right of picking up the child at the preschool. How can I kidnap the child, right? And third of all, you know, I'm here and trapped by this Aro Cabello. I cannot even go myself to the park, right? You think I'm going to, it's crazy, right? But it's just a move to discredit, right? To put something in the record that would sound like I'm a person that it's a danger, right? But the judge never said anything about international kidnapping in that verbal rendition. I mean, this is something that she's inventing and fabricating and putting it in the order as if she was a judge, right? But that's not the thing that led to the brilliant, what I think is brilliant. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But the thing the other thing is that she put that the court will readdress in the future the request for the psychiatric evaluation. Okay, that's what she put in the order, like saying that the request for psychiatric evaluation was not denied but deferred, right? Now, this is the interesting part. In the exchange on September 11 between Morgan Rivera Heidner, and the judge, was something like Morgan Rivera Heidner asked the question, like the judge wasn't talking about this, right? I mean, he had already denied the psychiatric evaluation request multiple times in different forms with different language, right? He said it in different ways. Some time passes, and then Morgan Heidner proactively says, Your Honor, something like, don't quote me on this, right? We have to request the audio transcripts and the recordings from well, in fact, I made the request to the appellate court to ask them to provide them, right? We have to review the audio to see exactly what Morgan Heidner said, right? But more or less, something along these lines. She said, asking a question, Your Honor, but will the court be willing to readdress this question if the respondent somehow finds the funds to pay for the psychiatric evaluation, something like that, right? And the judge said something I can't recall, right? But the judge said something along the lines like, submit a request, right? Or, if you submit a request, the court will, can't recall the wording, but it wasn't, an order. What the judge is asking is answering a question of Morgan Heitner. That is the exchange. The one who's proposing the revisitation or the reassessing the question of a psychiatric evaluation in the future is not the judge. Is Morgan Heitner, right? The judge is just responding to her question. That is the exchange. But now, then, Morgan Heitner, in one of her, in the latest draft that she sent to me without proper notice on Tuesday, in that draft, she turned that exchange into an actual order, saying that the court will readdress the request for a psychiatric evaluation in the future, putting it as a referral, as a deferral. Okay. So, and this is the argument. Here is the argument that the legal vaccine found that I think could be a brilliant argument, right? So the vaccine says, if the judge signs the order, signs that order that says that, if the judge does that, the judge is effectively delegating his role as decision maker to Morgan Heitner, because she's the one who proposed that in the verbal ruling, not the judge. So the judge would be given, by signing the order, I don't know if this would be a sound legal argument, right? But this is what the vaccine thinks. If the judge signs that, he would be effectively surrendering his role of judge to Morgan Heitner. I think it's a brilliant legal argument to make. But again, I don't know if it would be a sound legal argument. So again, if the informant ever sees this, please help me out a little bit here. Okay. So how to train your cat, okay? So now I'm going to close the legal topics for this session, and I'm going to move on to technical topics to give an idea to people how, I know how to communicate, right? Despite the Diosdado Cabello, having people breathing down my neck all day, right? So let me see how I frame this, right? So I don't want to make this a super deep technical session, right? I just want to give an idea, right? And this is documented in the books, in the websites. Like, the technique of interception is always based on radio frequency interception, right? Because all our devices are wireless, right? Your cell phone, if you have a satellite connection, that's also wireless. Like the satellite, it's, up on the sky, and there's no wire in between your antenna and the satellite. So everything that is wireless is vulnerable to interception, right? By these people with these techniques. But the actual mechanism of communication changes how the interception method works. So, and again, when I say these things, please have two things in mind. One, I'm not an expert in radio frequency. I have some ideas, right? Because my profession, but this is not my field. And secondly, I have no training or experience working on this. I just derive all these conclusions from observing, because they have been doing this for 10 years surrounding me, right? And that gives me a point of observation that is advantageous, and I can see, right? I can think, I can draw conclusions, right, from what I see. So, for example, your cell phone is a radiant device, meaning, it emits in all directions. It emits signals in all directions, right? That would be the uplink when you're sending data out. And when you receive, it can receive data from any direction because it has an antenna. That's why it doesn't matter where you're positioned, your cell phone always receives. And you can always communicate, it doesn't matter, right, where you are. Now, a satellite is a bit different. A satellite connection, the uplink is laser focused, right? It's a very narrow beam. Imagine And at the end, its radio frequency is the same, right? But the technique is that's why the antennas usually have this shape, right? Like a parabolic shape, because that concentrates, and it has a feed horn pointing in this direction, right? The antenna is like a ball. And what that does is that it concentrates when the emitter device, irradiates the signals. The dish concentrates the signals and focuses them in a narrow beam, right? So that makes it so, and then when the satellite responds, the satellite knows, because it's talking to the terminal, it knows more or less in which latitude, right, the terminal is located, right? And therefore it can produce a narrow beam, but not as narrow as the uplink. Why? Well, because the precision, and the Earth is moving and rotating and tilting, the axis is tilting a little bit. So it cannot be a laser focused, it's a wider beam, but it's still a beam, right? It's not radial as a cell phone. So you see the physics and the geometry is different when you want to intercept a satellite communication or a cell phone, right? And of the two, on the satellite, is different how you would intercept the uplink than how you would intercept the downlink, right? But anyhow, I just want to tell you that all this is documented in the book, and with the technique that they do with the cars, passing a constant speed and all that. It's all documented, right? So there's several weaknesses in our communication systems today that make these interceptions possible. Okay. Now I want to share with you a video, right? So you can. I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of the video here, but I want to tell you that it exists, right? So there is a video of the day that I created the vault to protect the antenna that I have in the backyard, the Viasat antenna, against Michael Pretty and the cats on the back, right? And the other cat on the other side. So I basically built a vault to protect it, to protect the uplink, because the problem is leakage. Like, even the antenna has this dish, right? This parabolic dish that concentrates the signals on that. The geometry of the antenna is not perfect, and the signals bounce and reflect, and a little bit. And so I noticed that the cats were putting sensors on their backyards, like long cables, like they were just trying to catch signals that were leaking, right? And that way they could see the uplink. I mean, although they're not in the path, but they're catching the signals that are leaking behind the antenna, right? And then they can see the MAC address that way. So what I did, I built a vault around the antenna using picket fence, pieces of wood, pickets basically. So this video, you can see how I built the vault, right? And I think you can see how I made the decisions about how to point the antenna. Like all of that is in the video, right? So you can see how a person that anybody can do this. Like all you have to do is apply logic, knowing how the interception technique works, and all that is captured in this video. So I'm gonna. Yes, the video is called "How to Protect Your Antenna" from Xi Jinping, Diosdado Cabello, and Michael Pretty. And it's in the channel called the Call Mobile channel. It's KOL-mobile in YouTube, right? So you can click on that. It's only 18 minutes, and you can see how I do that. Oh, and my mom helped me. My mom helped me build the vault. Okay. So so credits to my mom for helping me. Yes. So the first thing, in the case of satellite, you need to protect the uplink, right? Both physically from the cats surrounding you, and from the planes, right? Because they will fly planes at low altitude to catch the MAC address with the plane. And, look in the books for this concept, radio frequency eavesdropping interception avoidance system. That is the system I created to avoid the uplink interception with the planes and with the cars on the ground. I'm telling you all this, right? So you can see how understanding how the interception technique works gives you the tools to defeat it, right? It's not rocket science, really. Anybody can do this, right? Okay, but now I'm going to talk about the weaknesses of our communications systems, right? That they exploit. So for these exploits that they do, right, they need to collide in time and space with an important network event, like with the transmission or reception of data, because that way they see the MAC address, right? And when they see the MAC address flying through the air, then they know something that is going to be present in every single packet hop or transmission, right? And then it gives them a fixed anchor to brute force the entire key, right? The encryption key. So that's why the MAC address is so important. Sorry, important to them, right? But so what they need is to collide in time and space with a transmission of data, right? And this is key, right? Collision in time and space. Now, I see several weaknesses in our communication system, right? One is that it's all happening on a single channel, right? So, for example, in the case of this antenna, when I send data, right, imagine that I do a request to google.com to see the homepage of Google. So my antenna sends the request, data goes out, right? Eventually that request gets to Google, Google processes the request, sends data back, and then the satellite sends data back to my antenna, right? With the HTML page. Look at my mom carrying the pickets. She's a trooper, I have to tell you. Strong woman. So the satellite, sends the data down and you intercept it, right? Sorry, the antenna gets it, right? But you see, the time that it takes for the data to go out from the antenna, right? And then come down from the satellite with the response from Google servers, all in all, it takes less than a second, right? With the current technologies that we have and the current internet speeds, it takes milliseconds, right? So this makes it so that a car that passes by, when I send the request, because the difference between the request and time, right? The difference between the request and the response is less than a second. So that car, if I'm sending something up, he will see the response down, right? Because it takes more than a second for a car to travel in front of the antenna, because the car travels at 20 miles per hour. So this is a weakness, right? Because the two important events, the uplink and the downlink, are happening very close in time. That makes it so a car passing by will get one of the two events, right? The other weakness is that some of our communications use the same key for the uplink and the downlink. Some of them, not all of them, but some of the encryption systems that the modern world uses today use the same channel for the uplink and the downlink, the same encryption keys. And this is a weakness, because if they capture one, they can decrypt the other, right? And the biggest weakness of them all is that it's a single channel for the uplink and a single channel for the downlink. Why I say that? Well, because if it's a single channel and they get the key, they get everything, right? The winner takes all, right? And that's the weakness. And that's how I'm doing it, right? I'm basically attacking the things that they need to accomplish to intercept the data. So, of course, I'm not going to tell exactly how I do it, right? But my system splits the communication into multiple channels, right? One channel is near-field communication, the same thing they're doing with the cars and the agents. I borrowed that. I inspired myself on their system, and I created something similar, right? It's a system that, the two people exchanging data have to be close range, right? But my system is better because their system is single channel, right? I can intercept the data and I can decrypt it because it's single channel, right? They have the same weakness as every modern system. My system is better, and again, I'm not saying this, implying that I'm better than them. Well, I'm saying this, implying that I understand so fundamentally what they do that I can defeat it, and the only reason for that is because they put me here for 11 years, right? So my system is not a single channel system, it's a multi-channel system. And the idea is, say that you want to send a stream of data, right? You want to send, imagine, you want to send a message. I'm going to make a hypothetical example, right? Let's say that the example is the 387th court is going to try to find you in contempt on October 10th. Right? That's the message. So what my system does is that it encrypts that string, right? And it produces an encrypted string. But if I send that string on a single channel, as all our communication systems do, if somehow they put somebody in the middle, even if it's near field, right? If they put an agent in the middle, and that's why yesterday, because I said I was going to communicate, they had all these people in the use aisle at Target, right? Because they thought that that's what I was going to do. That wasn't the place. But I want to tell them that even if they capture something, it wouldn't work, and I'm going to explain why. So, okay, so the string, the data, right, is they're going to try to find you in contempt of court on October 10th. Okay? You encrypt that, and you end up with an encrypted string. Sorry, the video. I think I'm going to pause the other video. No, I'm going to leave it so you see how the thing is built in 18 minutes. Which is funny, right? It takes 18 minutes to build something that defeats a multi-billion-dollar criminal network, right? Anyhow, so the string is they're going to try to find you in contempt of court on October 10th. You encrypt that, and you end up with an encrypted string of bytes. Now, if you send that string of bytes through any means that is single channel, if they intercept it, game over, right? Because they will brute force it, and they will decrypt it eventually, right? Even if it takes a day, 2 days, 5 days, but they will decrypt it. So the technique is splitting it into a multi-channel communication system. So you imagine that the byte stream is, I don't know, 500 bytes, okay? So you split it in 3 pieces, 200 bytes, 100 bytes, and 200 bytes. So you have 3 pieces of different sizes, okay? You send the first piece, and this is another simplified thing, right? You can make it more secure, right? But so you send one stream via near-field communication, right? You send the second stream via ultrasound communication, right? And you send the third stream via a satellite downlink. That way, the only way they can decrypt the communication is by intercepting the 3 channels. And of course, you do this over different periods of time. You're not going to do this at the same time, right? You can send the near field where you're at target. You can send the ultrasound frequency communication while you are Walmart, and you can receive the last 200 bytes of the stream while you're at home an hour later, right? So you see, the tactic or the technique here is to destroy the possibility of colliding in time and space, because now they have to collide in time and space with not 1, but 3 separate events that they don't know when they're going to happen, right? Asynchronously. So the asynchronity of this is important because it destroys the possibility to foresee when the communication is going to happen, right? All synchronous communications are more prone to interception because they can foresee, the network event is going to happen in 10 seconds, right? And then they send the car, or the dog walker, or the field denning with the bike, any of these things, right? So the idea is making it asynchronous, splitting the communication into multiple channels, and separating the channels in time and space. And importantly, there's I don't know if you would see it, right? But there's an important property is that in my design, right? Is that the channels use fundamentally different physical mediums of transmission. So, for example, near-field communication requires, close-range directional communication, right? So the mechanics of the transmission there is very different than the one that I'm doing with the ultrasound. The ultrasound is basically a radial communication. The person can be very far away if the potency of the transmission of the sound, ultrasound, is strong enough to reach, say, 25 meters, and it doesn't have to be directional. So it's a radiant type of communication, right? Closer range than cellular because it's just feet away, right? But the person doesn't have to be so close to you, right? And satellite is directional coming from the space, right? So to intercept this, they would have to have a plane to intercept my downlink, right? So they will have to have a plane, an ultrasound receiver tuned to the frequencies I'm using, and somebody physically present in the middle between, the relay person that I'm using and me at 3 different times in space, and 3 different times in the time scale, and 3 different spaces, 3 different geographical places in the world at different times. So you see, the probability of their meeting those 3 conditions is exponentially more, smaller than meeting just one, right? They're just passing a car in front of my house when there is a network event with the antenna, right? So that's the reason why they can defeat it, because of probability, laws of nature, right? The same thing that I mentioned in the book, right? And in one of the sessions before. They would have to become magicians, right, to be able to intercept any of this. So, that's the gist of it. But the weakness, really, what I want to focus more, the weakness of our communication systems are, and this weakness, I believe they're deliberate, right? Like they made sure, the Chinese, who are the people that at the end control the deployment and rollout of these technologies, the communication technologies. I mean, every electronic is basically made in China at this point, right? They must know that these are weaknesses, right? If I know it, being a single actor, with no resources, they being a state, right, a country with the state level resources, they must know that these are weaknesses, right? And if they were working on the interest of security, they would mitigate these weaknesses, right? But they don't mitigate them because they exploit them, right? So the weaknesses are using a single channel or 2 channels, but that are too close in time and space, like the antenna. Like the antenna is an example of that, right? It has 2 separate channels with different properties and different characteristics. But the weakness is that the 2 channels are active very close in space and time. So, if they get the MAC address from one, they can decrypt the other, right? So that's a weakness, right? Now, and this is the reason in Katy, you will see houses that have 2 antennas, right? The reason in 2 different places, those houses are more important. And that what they're doing with that, they're separating the channels, right? It's exactly the same technique that I'm using. So they're putting antenna for the downlink in one side and antenna for the uplink in the other side. And they're separating the channels to prevent exactly this problem, right? So the houses that have multiple antennas in Katy are more important, are more sensitive, handle more sensitive data. And that's why when I do my eavesdropping rounds, I focus more on those houses. Well, I'm going to solve that mystery for you here. So you see, I think more beyond the technical details, right? I think the takeaway that I want to leave you with is that understanding the flaws that they exploit is important. And that is the only way to defeat that, right? Understanding deeply how is that they do it. And that's why reverse engineering, and even if it's not in the technical, even if it's on the legal, like when I understood that they were exploiting the Rule 21 of procedure, right, to make it impossible for the target to object, I mean, that realization in itself is important because it allows me to defeat what they're doing, also do it to them, and also find other targets, right? But all of that is only possible because I gained that understanding of what is the mechanic of the thing, right? The mechanics. So with that, I'm going to close this session. I invite you to watch this video of how to train your cat. you know, I mean, how to train your cat, like name this way, because right, like all these countermeasures allow me to, you know, keep these cats that they have next to my house under control, right? They can't do anything to my communications because, you know, I can counter them, right? But it's possible through knowledge only. So I invite you to watch this video. It's in the Cold Mobile channel, and you can look for the keyword antenna, and you will find it. I will try to also post it on the other channel because, you know, this is obviously a good video. And there's another one in which I pick the location of the antenna, and you can hear it's in Spanish because I'm talking to my mom. My mom is a very logical person, right? So the way I determine the optimal location for the antenna, which Diosdado Cabello hasn't been able to defeat, was by just talking, right? With the installer, and I figured it out on the spot. And again, not because I'm smarter, but because I understand how the interception technique works, right? And you know, it could be a good example to see how can you, it could help you as I'm talking to, you know, potential citizens, viewers, right, that have the same problem. These videos can show you how to do it yourself, right, and protect yourself against people like Diosdado Cabello, Xi Jinping, and your cats that you must have next to your house, right? So, well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.